So good evening, everyone. Welcome to Cerulean Arts, a virtual tour and talk for the current collective exhibition, which features the work of Judy Caldwell, Carol Cole, Ruth Formica, Kimberly Hoechst, and Elena Posey. So we are going to proceed through the gallery and visit each exhibition, and the artists will speak about their work. So first up is Ruth Formica. So Ruth, how are you?
I'm great, thank you.
So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Well, most of these paintings are some of the last paintings that I'll be doing in Florida since I've moved. And I'm very much into the color of Florida, the plant life of Florida, the fruits, the luscious smell of the flowers that are there just growing outside everywhere. And I'm also into studying darks and lights and trying to get some good value changes. I love putting the still life in front of a window and then doing a landscape, which as a landscape that I imagine, because I would like that to be my backyard, although it's not.
Oh my God.
So I designed my own backyard. That one we previously just looked at, I was really into making the white vase against all that color. In this one, I've worked on a number of times this painting, and I just love it. Every time I go into it, I find something new that I can do. For instance, I like the little leaves that have red, and they're not really red in person. And then I got into doing the flower pots and making them all different. And again, we have a pool outside this time and the ocean. So that was a lot of fun to do this one.
So these are oils, Ruth?
These are all oils. Now this one has a little more going on than usual, the oil in the center. And this was just a crowded, just full of plant life section that I imagine of my patio looking out over the Gulf of Mexico. And you can see the flowers are just, it's just the way it is in Florida. It's the one thing I loved about Florida was the plant life, the smell, walking around the neighborhood, just things are blooming everywhere and you can't even identify what is coming from where. Unfortunately, the weather had a downside. 7 months of hot summer didn't cut it, but that is what I really loved about Florida. And these little watercolors that I have, these are from different thoughts of different oceans and bodies of water. This would be, a beach in, say, the Eleuthera Islands. And you see, I always like to put a little bit of clouds running along the horizon. I like that. Whereas this one would be more of an Atlantic Ocean painting with the greener sky and the more blue-gray water.
So are you doing these from observation or memory or photograph?
No, I haven't done anything from observation. Everything is imagination and memory. And again, these are lovely. This one on the bottom, I love the little gray clouds coming in, and the one on the top has the little white clouds spritzing along with the really dark water. So I like that one with the little gray clouds. Storm just coming in.
When you said they were all from memory, are
Yes.
the flowers also from memory and the pot?
Yes. Well,
Wow.
yes, they are. Like I know what they look like.
Wow.
But I'll paint them. You'll be able to see what kind of flower it is, but they're not painted exactly. They're my thought of what that flower looks like.
Oh.
I do get a vase of flowers quite often only because that helps me get started in painting. It puts me in the mood. You know, I love flowers. I can't deny it. And now this painting, this was actually started in Philadelphia, but I was thinking about California and it was finished in Florida. So this painting's been around. It's gone everywhere. But I love the open doorway, the giant doorway, sort of like the giant windows I had here in the apartment, you know, and the balcony and the plants. And you can even see in front of that black pot is my little cat, Twinkie.
Is that you on the terrace?
No, sadly, I was not in California. But I always love those plants with the huge leaves. And then we have some iris and fruit on the table. And I always like to have also patterns. So I have a little pattern on the white cloth on the table and a little bit of a pattern on the rug and the big vase on the left. So yeah, that's just the epitome of how I would want an apartment to be in California. I'd move there in a minute if I could afford it. And these are more small watercolors. You see in the center one, well, this one is a purple and blue combination, violet and blue and green. And the middle one is a play on just green and pink. And I tried to make the pink sky reflect in the sand. And this is a definite Atlantic Ocean painting. You know, it's getting stormy in the sea. They're so much fun to do though. I love doing little watercolors. They're just a break. And this is, I don't know, this is one of my favorite ones, I think, of lilies. Like I do lilies all the time. Somehow just those couple lilies that are just starting to open on the left just made the whole painting for me. And again, we have the, you know, the huge outdoor patio. Yeah, see there's two on the left-hand side. That I thought they were just great. You know, lilies, sometimes they open at the bottom first. And other times they just are open everywhere. And I love those little stamens that come up from the lilies. And I also like to play with the leaves and the vase and goldfish. Then I have the goldfish and the red cloth, you know, getting along with the lemons and the oranges. And then I have the opposite sort of cooler colors of the rug and the leaves. So they're sort of playing against each other. I like that. And the little curtain with barely a pattern. Oh, now the tiger, that was a really fun painting. I think I started with the tiger and built everything else around it. I don't know what possessed me to paint a tiger. Maybe it's because we had a year of the tiger coming up in 2022. I don't know, but I was thinking of something, you know, I like a little bit of the exotic in all my paintings. And so where would you see a tiger on a beach who scared those people away that were at the table? You know, where would it be? South Africa? I don't know, but to me that it's like very exotic. And the leaves, oh, there's a plant called sea grapes, and I just love the leaves. They're huge. A leaf is about as big as your face, and they'll get different colors during various times of the year. They'll turn orange or red. But I like making little patterns with the lines on the leaves that really isn't the color. And then some of them I don't fill in at all. I just left white. So it really gave it, I thought, a nice movement. And the little cloth coming down from the table, I just love that. And you'd see the front of it's in shadow and the top of the table's in more light. And the tiger's coming at you. It's very exciting painting. it was exciting to do it. Now, this is another painting that I like doing, and also worked on a number of times, changing things. But I think when I put the black and white striped cloth on it, it just made all the difference. Again, we have the lilies, we have patterns and leaves that aren't really there, and a pineapple, which is really fun to paint. The pineapple has its own little pattern that it makes all around it, and then all of a sudden, poof, there's this pineapple shoots coming out the top. Sometimes they're crinkled and dry, and other times they have different color in. I just think they're wonderful. And also I like doing the right-hand side pattern of the drape over there, the green drape. That was also a lot of fun. And then we have the far, we have the far distance. In all my paintings, I try to get a lot of distance, the near, middle, and far. And that definitely got it in this one too.
So you said this will be your last Florida set?
Yes, because now I've moved to South Carolina for the next few years, and they have mountains here. So it'll be interesting to see what changes, because my painting really changed a lot when I moved to Florida. I definitely, am inspired by whatever climate I'm in, whatever place I'm in. It always picks up in my paintings. I'm sure this will be no different.
So have you started painting down there yet?
No, I've just been busy moving,
Mm.
packing, unpacking, repacking again. At least I do have my studio set up though in my new house. I did get that done. So step one, check.
Well, it's a great farewell to Florida.
Well, thank you very much.
I look forward to seeing South Carolina.
Yes, me too. Me too. All right, well, thank you.
Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
So now we're moving into Judy Caldwell's exhibition. Judy?
Yes. And a little bit about myself. I've been painting all my life, most especially at my grandfather's farm up in New Hampshire. When I went off to college, I was a history of art major. And then when I came to Philadelphia, I did both the certificate and post-bac programs at the academy. I used to say of myself that I was a traditional landscape painter in non-traditional colors because I hated the color green. That's still the case. And I guess I'm just one of those people that I do not like being put in a box. And this show afforded me the opportunity to show all the different aspects of my artwork. There are traditional brush work that I've done. But more than that, I'm highlighting my obsession with mark making and doing the rubbings of local woods with found objects. And the two paintings that you just walked past were rubbings done on floor planks in a studio up in Monhegan Island. We're now going along, and the painting on the left actually is a rubbing that I used a found piece of charcoal on the rocks on Monhegan Island, and I did a rubbing using that charcoal right on the rocks itself. And it just amazed me that something so simple as using charcoal and the formation of the rock could end up giving me a landscape that is so intense and beautiful as far as I was concerned. So I enjoyed doing that tremendously. The next one shows where I've gotten into paint pours. And this is very exciting for me because it always gives you the unexpected. And the mark making that I make here are usually done with anything from a bowl scraper to a rock that I picked up on the shores in Greece, to chalk that is sort of sidewalk chalk. And as it hits the water from the paint pours, it changes color. So everything is so fluid, so unexpected that I enjoy staying there and working at it and seeing what I can make come forth. So those are paint pours usually made with the high fluid paints that Golden puts out now. And I do most of my work on the floor, so the paint pours can really get saturated or pushed around a lot more than if it was on the wall. These rubbings on the left are from wood planks in a bridge on Mohegan Island. And for once, I enjoyed making titles for these. The one on the left is No, It's Not a Madonna. And the one on the right is You Crack Me Up. And this plank that was on a bridge was well weathered and gave me a lot of marks that for me, I found interesting as being people. People came out of this rubbing, and to me, it got more fascinating the longer I was rubbing. And I do use various things when I'm doing a rubbing. And I've been rubbing all my life. I much to the dismay of my kids, I was in St. Petersburg, down on my hands and knees, rubbing a manhole cover. And I've been known to be in various places doing odd things like that. I'm loving it. The one on the right here is a paint pour. And the darker blue lines are actually made with a stone that I have that I've used in all kinds of things. And it gives me such a mark that no other thing can do as well. So that's how that happened. And one of the things that I've been doing recently is I will write how I am feeling or what I'm thinking about on the sides of the canvas. And it's far more interesting for me to do that because then I can really remember what it was like when I painted that picture. And far more interesting to me than making a title for it. The one on the left here is done with acrylics. It's all acrylics, and mostly a bowl scraper or some kind of palette knife. And my love for birch trees comes out very much so here. Anything about New England, and I'm there. Even though I'm painting in Vero Beach, my mind is always in New England, and most especially at my grandfather's farm. So it's a delight to be among the things that I love so much, and most especially birch trees and trees, evergreens. The next one is another paint pour. And again, all three of these are paint pours. And I had great fun titling these. The one on the left is You Name It. I couldn't. And for me, it's so playful, so unexpected, so delicious. It's delicious and fun to experiment with all kinds of different paints and see where it takes you. And for me, it just makes my imagination flow beautifully. The rubbing itself, I honestly feel as though I'm recording history in a rubbing, because I'm rubbing most likely local woods, and that's what I love. I love the tactfulness, the tactileness. Paint pours for me, what attracts me of this is just learning to accept what it's going to do and see if I can make a composition out of it.
So after you pour, you go back into it and work into it?
Yeah. As it's drying, I will use the chalk, and after it dries, then sometimes I will go back in and I'll put in various things.
Thank you.
It's all about the mark making as far as I'm concerned. And this one, it's crazy. And crazy is not the right word. It was exciting to work with it and to bring it forward into a realm that, well, maybe it's my mind that makes it so crazy. Just enjoyed what happened to the paint. And then we come back to the sketches that I did with the found charcoal on the rocks by the shore on Monhegan. This is done with crayon, but again, it was on the rock itself. So I put the canvas on the rock and then use a crayon and see what ridges happen there. And for me, it was definitely a landscape, and with the wonderful pine trees that they have on Monhegan. And the charcoal, this one again is charcoal on campus on a rock. And very evergreeny and very landscape. Exactly the way it looks on Monhegan. Looking from the water up the rocks to the pine trees. And then we end with a more traditional brush painting that I always enjoy using a blue and a yellow to make that green that I hate come alive, especially when I'm dealing with a forest. And this was almost like that forest that I find in New England. And for me, my forests always have to have a nice road into it as well as out of it. And this is home for me also. I have a hard time sometimes when I'm in Vero, when I'm in Florida, really thinking about and being in New England, but it keeps coming out because that is so deeply me that it overrides Florida resort art. So that's me, and I'm just delighted to have been able to show all of the many facets of my art, and not be put into a box by saying, this is the way I paint. I paint in so many different ways. And I'm never going to stop learning and being different from the painting before. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. So now we're moving into Carol Cole's exhibition. Hi, Carol.
Hi. First, thank you to Mike and Tina for allowing us to just make what we want to make and then bring it in, and then you hang it so that it looks more coherent. Sort of what Judy said too. I mean, it's like we're free to try anything, and it's really a privilege. So this is a piece that is, so my background is that I didn't know I was an artist for a long time. I had a good friend as a child who could draw recognizable horses and people and whatever, and I was never interested in doing that. I was always playing with stuff, but I didn't know it was art at the time. And it took me years. I was a high school social studies and English teacher, and then we moved because I got married. My husband was going to school and I didn't have a job. I started doing pottery, which I'd sort of dabbled in, and I had time to take it seriously. I became a potter, became a TV producer when we moved another time. And then I became a potter again, and we moved to Philadelphia, and I was doing ceramic porcelain functional pottery, and then I started doing porcelain jewelry. And then someone introduced me to handmade paper, which I didn't even understand why they were telling me this, but I use it a lot like clay. So on this piece around the edge there, looks like clay. It's just handfuls of strained paper pulp that I press down. I can press things into it, like in that circle in the upper right. You can press into it and like you can clay and get a texture. But then I also can combine it with found objects, which I always had collected and couldn't figure out what to do with when I was doing clay, but they work well with paper. So it's really called object-inspired design. I have a whole collection of things neatly organized in my studio, and I'll take some of them out and I'll play with them, and then something will occur. And then later, I'm really interested in the titles. They come to me later and they're important. This one, for example, is a plastic tray from chicken wings at Costco that I found really beautiful, the bottom of it. And then I cover it with handmade paper, which shrink wraps, and then you can paint that. And then I just decorated it with stuff. I had golf tees and golf pencils and lollipop sticks and beads. And this is called Tea Time. Or no, To a Tea, sorry, To a Tea. The titles, I love the titles, they're funny. And so this next one is, I was at the Lower Merion metal recycling dump, dropping things off. And these metal E's, rusty, also my favorite color is rust. Rusty E's were on the ground when I went back to my car. And so you're not supposed to really take things, but I couldn't help it. And my husband tells me that he thinks they are from a transformer, whatever. And that's another thing. I don't care what the real use of the objects that I choose are, and I don't want the viewer to immediately discover them. So I just think they're beautiful, and I treat them as though they're some kind of a precious object, even though none of them are. That one's called E-Chart. The one on the left is called Rondo. It's piano, pieces from a piano. The action, those sort of triangular things are the action. And in the background, there's sheet music that I've painted in. The one on the left is called Color Wheel. I belong to this group of artists called the Dumpster Divers of Philadelphia, we don't really, well, we can, but we don't always get found objects from dumpsters, but we can. Someone gave me all those brushes and it looked like a color wheel, and then I had to make a color wheel. This small piece on the left is from a rotisserie chicken container. It's the pattern on the bottom of it, I thought was just beautiful. There are a lot of little diamond shapes. And so I, again, covered it with handmade paper, and then it's called Bedazzled, and it's just covered with beads and trim and paint. I like to bring out the textures in the paper and the objects by putting a solid color of paint and then dry brushing a lot of layers of other paint over the top. And this one is called, what's it called? Needlework Mania. And someone gave me a lot of knitting needles. Someone was clearing out a house and there was a garage sale, and my friend called and said, there are a box of knitting needles, do you want them? And they're just beautiful. I think they're just, the colors of them are just gorgeous. And so behind there, I also included a crocheted doily and buttons, and just to have different kinds of needlework represented. And again, this is handmade paper, and the edges, it's the paper pulp thick to give it more texture. This is a piece that I made a while ago for a show about human trafficking, the mannequin and the rusty chain. And then recently with the abortion situation in Texas and wherever, I decided it really meant a lot about that. And so that's what it signifies now. It's called My Body, My Choice. This small one is on the left is called Bridges. It's so actually on these walls, I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm very influenced by the colors there, and Native American art is the only art I saw as a child, really. So it's very influenced me. So this is Bridges, and it seems obvious to me because I played the violin when I was a little kid. These are bridges from violins and cellos. But I've realized that even people who know a lot about music, if they haven't played a string instrument, they can't recognize that out of context. And again, I don't want people to notice the objects that I'm using immediately. I want them just to, as an afterthought, because wait a minute, that's, some familiar object. And again, I just treat them as beautiful jewelry almost. And change the sort of ordinary into something that looks precious. And these two pieces are experiment where I was using canvas. I don't usually use canvas. Most of my work is paper pulp over a polystyrene, but it's a construction insulation foam base. And these are stretched canvases, so it's unprimed canvas. And this is similar. This is a rubbing, Judy. I put the canvas over some pierced metal things that I had, and rubbed and did the painting on it to get that texture, and then stretched it. And these are porcupine quills. The long ones are African porcupines. These are the black things are Go markers from the game of Go, and whatever. I just have a whole lot of stuff in my studio, and I just grab it and put it together to make the composition.
So Carol, are all your items well organized?
Very well organized.
It's not just a big.
No, many small bins and bags and labeled. Yes, they're all very organized. I'll have a bin that says small plastic things, or circles, or lines. So, and this one is got a computer part in the middle there, and a puka shell necklace I took apart, are the white beads, and those are emery boards, oversized emery boards, and pieces of jewelry and the crocheted thing. And there's some acorns in that one too, or maybe the acorns are in the other one. Anyway, whatever seems to fit. And I don't come up with most people come up with a design and then they find things. The objects themselves create the design for me. I play with them. I put them on I have a big 4 by 8 foot work table in the middle of my studio, and I just play with the objects. These two pieces are just paper pulp, textured and painted. And embossed sort of with things I can stick into it and get the texture, and then I can bring it up with paint. I think around what I call the sun on the upper left is coral, a piece of brain coral that I pressed in. Various plastic things. The little road there is a plastic gear that I ran up there, and just different things that I collect to use as things to impress with. This piece is called Sconce, and it's the metal piece. The tall things, the three things, are from antique curtain rod things. And I love the shadow, actually, that is being cast there. And then the metal piece is from a 1950s car taillight. So when my friends, the dumpster divers, when we get together, we bring things that we've found that we may not want, but we know someone else might want. And so not just the knitting needles, but other things that I've gotten come from that source. I also go to junkyards, hardware stores. I don't spend a lot on art materials. Find things in the street, rusty bits. This is the other paper pulp piece. One is called, the other one's called Sunset, the Sunrise, this one's called Sunset. Again, it wasn't that I intended to make a sunset. When it was finished, I looked at it and thought, oh, I guess I should call this Sunset. It's pretty intuitive. One thing I do like, symmetry and repetition. So I know that. I once took a class with Mo Brooker, and at the end of the class, he had us bring in a piece of art that we were making. And he says in a confrontational way, do you always do symmetrical things? And I went, oh yeah, maybe. And I tried doing unsymmetrical for a while, and I thought, nope, I own it. I do symmetrical. So these three pieces, the one on the left is a collection of microphones from the inside of old telephone handsets. Again, a dumpster diver friend gave me a bag of those, and it just came to mind that now we're always saying, can you hear me now? Because of Zoom and whatever. And so that's the name, that's the question mark, and that's the name of this piece. And this is a piece, I was at a reuse place and they had these garters, and the metal pieces are corset stays. And I remembered wearing those girdles, as many of you ladies on this Zoom, I believe, do, and how uncomfortable it all was. And so the name of this piece is, No, I Am No Longer a Slave to Fashion. And the last piece is called How Does Your Garden Grow? And it started where someone gave me this fabric, this curtain lace, and it just looked very floral to me. And then I just sort of went with it. The beads are beads that I've had for years from when I was making porcelain jewelry. And there's some knitting needles on either side, and that some metal stuff in the middle. That part of it is a trellis sort of for a house plant, and then some other things, I don't know what they are. So one of the inspirations, I mean, I really like, it's hard to know what's appropriate word now, tribal, primitive, not supposed to say those, whatever, non-Western, you know what I mean, that's kind of art. So indigenous, and I've always, that's the kind of art that I really enjoy looking at. And what I know about that is that story is that when the English started trading with the Africans, and you know, what do you want? Look what we've got. We'll trade with you. They had buttons. This is like in the 19th century, early 19th century. They had buttons to trade, that these bone buttons that they made in England, and the Africans loved them. Not that they used them to close clothing; they just used them decoratively in their sculpture. And I just thought that's sort of how I feel, that I find things, I don't really care what their prior use was. Can be from a computer, it can be from a girdle. It's just, I look at the object as an object, and if I think it's beautiful, I want to use it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I put a link in the chat to your creativity workshop that you'll be doing. Did you want to speak about that for a minute? Like what that's about?
I'm offering it this Saturday, but the class is full. But we're going to offer it again, I think, February 5th.
Yes.
And it's from 10 to 3. And it's for people who want to make art. They're just not sure what to do or what their gift is or what they should be doing. And they're just confused. It can be someone who's collected art and loves art, it's never really made it, sort of wanted to. It can be people who were discouraged from making art when they were children because they, like me, didn't draw well. There are people who are artists but just sort of want a fresh start. And there are these very unthreatening, very simple, very fun exercises that we do during the day. And in the course of the day, by comparing yourself to these other people in the group, you start seeing that everybody's got a different gift. And it's called doing what comes naturally, which just means you should just do what you do and what's easy for you and you're interested in. You don't have to draw the figure if that's not your interest. And then once you sort of identify what you're interested in doing, then you work on it and get better at it. That's it.
Thanks, Carol.
Mhm.
So now we're moving into Kim Heschen. Kim?
Yes, hi everyone. I'm Kim Hoechst, and thanks for being here tonight. So I'll just take a minute to tell you a little bit about myself and my inspiration in painting, and then we can talk more about the work in the show. But I've been painting for about 15 years now. It's my second career. I had a 20-year career in marketing and branding, and now I'm doing what I'm really passionate about, which is painting. And it came about painting when I left the corporate world to spend more time with my young child. And I was just grateful to find PAFA and the continuing ed program. And I came there to, see what I could learn, and got just very, deeply involved in studying it extensively, drawing and painting and sculpture. But I think for me, I knew pretty much all along that painting, especially oil painting, was really my passion. And so I've just, it's been a journey, and I just continue along it. I have always embraced representational painting because I think for me, what was so exciting to me in learning to paint was just understanding how light and shadow could bring the painting to life. And my paintings are an exploration, I think, of how light and shadow affects color and texture and a sense of space. And for me, I paint a range of genres, and I think really anything is fair game to paint if the play of light and shadow makes it interesting or beautiful. So I draw my subject matter from everyday life, and also, in what I find in my travels. And though I paint a range of things, I think there's definitely a lot of key elements that I come back to over and over again. And you'll certainly see those in the work that's in the show. I really embrace architectural elements like windows and doors and archways. I think for me, they're important because they not only help place the viewer in the space, but also because they provide these opportunities to create vignettes or like mini compositions within the painting, the larger piece. And I think that's very interesting and exciting to me. And I think, I keep pushing myself to want to go in a more abstract direction, but I'm sort of still finding my way through representational painting. And I think I've had sort of a little bit of a new direction lately in that I've been striving to kind of, as I think about my composition, really focus on elements of abstraction I can bring into it. Things like this repetition of shapes and colors, rhythm, geometry, color. And these are all oils. I've, experimented with different mediums, but I think for me, the vibrancy and of course, the durability of oil is really appealing. But I think also I love that it's such a malleable medium that there's just so much that, you can sand the painting down, you can rework it, so I think the open-endedness of that is very appealing to me. The paintings in this show are very much an exploration of light and shadow in exterior spaces, and then in interior spaces, kind of exploring the juxtaposition between what's inside and what's outside, and how that transition occurs in what we perceive in both spaces. And this is a good example of this. You know, I've painted interiors for quite a while, but I think I've shifted toward being more interested in grounding you in the inside space, but then giving you the landscape view outside and how those two merge. And I think the really exciting thing for me that made me want to do this particular painting was that beautiful reflection on the floor where the door is open, which it just kind of brings them both together. So there's the sky and what's outside reflected on the inside. You sort of, again, have that vignette sense of there's a painting within the painting in terms of what's outside the door. I did bring in a little still life, and this is just, again, wanting, though, not to have a traditional still life, but have it in a sense of space and bring in that outside landscape element.
So Kim, what reference are you working from? Are you working from direct observation or?
Yes, well, I work from life whenever I can. That's always my first choice. So the two we just looked at were from life. I am reluctant. I will say I'll use photographic reference, but I say that reluctantly because there's so much interpretation and painting from visual memory and imagination that I do, that I think a photograph will give me a basis to remember what I saw, that I was excited to paint, and to help me, place where everything goes. But from there, it really becomes about this interpretation. And again, in my inspiration of bringing out light and shadow, of making the painting about that, and that the actual objects or items sort of become secondary. And this was one where, I was really looking to, this was done from initially a photo reference, but again, there's so much that, really what I was thinking of was, I love always the Paris rooftop paintings. And this happens to be, an area close to where I live, but I wanted to bring sort of some of that aspect to it. So is it a real place? Not really, because there's been a lot of interpretation till it got to be what it was. And the same with these pieces. These are pieces from when I was visiting in Boston, and we were just outside of Boston, and I thought, in fact, this area had a little bit of what is magic about Paris, that there was this consistency in the architecture and the shapes and the colors, those bay windows and those greens and golds. It was just sort of the whole area just kind of had this cohesiveness about it that I found really, and again, the repetition that was created rhythms and shapes that inspired me to paint these. This is another piece where these are buildings on a street. This is in Ocean City, it's Asbury Avenue, but I was really fascinated with a lot of this painting was in shadow, but there were so many beautiful things going on in the reflections in the windows. So for me, I definitely the architectural element of windows are very interesting, whether you're looking through them from the inside or if you're on the outside and there are these amazing reflections happening, which are slightly distorted. And again, there's just this interesting abstraction that naturally occurs. And I just thought, like, it's very, to me, very interesting that there's sort of mini paintings in each one of these windows. And in addition to the beautiful sunlight hitting that wall, there's all kinds of other things going on. One of the things that I wanted to do, all the paintings in this show, or not all of them, the majority of these paintings in the show are very recent. I did them in the last couple months because I really wanted to take a step back this summer, and I was trying to see if I could push my work into a different direction. And one of the things I chose to do was to bring, I often paint places, and people say that, they often say they think of Hopper when they see some of my outside paintings, especially. And they say, well, yours are a little maybe more optimistic, but I was always very focused on the architecture and the place and the light, and I didn't put people into them. And a lot of what I was painting, I didn't feel that it was necessary and that it might even become a distraction, but there were some paintings that I wanted to do with these spaces, the farmer's market, and then the one next to this is the Continental in Old City, the larger piece that's right next to these, and then another piece that had a really interesting sort of abstract quality in these market umbrellas. But I realized that because I'm still doing representational painting, that all of them would feel too lonely or just not feel right if they didn't have the presence of people. So that was something new for me, to bring a little more life into my work. And I wanted to include people in it, but not make it about the people, just have them, you know, make it seem populated and alive. And so that was how I started bringing a new element in. And this piece was, again, I think it was definitely feeling nostalgic when I decided to paint this. This was based off of a photographic reference I took a number of years ago. And on a happy summer Friday, when we were out at a First Friday and went here after. And I was sad to find out that this is actually closed now. This is the Continental in Old City. But for me, what excited me about making this painting were those beautiful shadows on the wall, and that I always loved that swanky sign because that's just a piece of sculpture in and of itself. But I just thought the beautiful evening light and the shadows that were cast, again, gave it this interesting element of abstraction that was really beautiful. And this is the market umbrella painting I mentioned. I had wanted to make this painting for a long time, and I didn't know quite what to do with it because, again, I wasn't really putting people in my paintings, and I didn't quite know what the point would be. And once I got sort of to this point where I'm like, again, the people can be in it to bring it life, and that's all they need to do. I felt like, okay, I can paint this now. And I was just very excited about the dynamic and sort of interesting shapes that the overlapping umbrellas made, and, you know, the varying shades of red. And it felt like, you know, it's a happy summer Friday kind of a mood. And I felt like the vibrant reds and the umbrellas kind of brought that to life. And these two pieces, most of the paintings we've been looking at, I paint on different surfaces depending on what work I'm doing. And sometimes I like wood panels for architecture, and all the ones we were looking at today up to now have been on linen or linen panels. But I also work on copper panels, which I kind of stumbled into from a friend who gave me a copper panel to try painting on. And I don't use them for everything. I think that it has a very specific place, but the warm color of the copper and the beautiful reflective surface can have a really interesting interaction with oil paint. And I find they just add an element of warmth and vibrancy to things like a landscape here, like a snow scene where, you know, it's cold, it's warm light from the sun, but you've got a lot of white and sort of cold colors as well. And there's something that copper, working on the copper, I think makes an interesting effect that sort of helps me bring up the warm colors and like kind of the glowy feeling you get from looking at, like in this case, a field of snow, or in the other case, you know, this barn where there's light blasting through and this bank barn. So those two pieces are a copper. And these final two pieces, these are both from, you know, from the Jersey Shore. And again, I was looking, you know, in the painting the exterior, the sun, the light on the landscape, but also on structures. And I get very fascinated with this is a very not exciting thing in Ocean City. It's the fishing pier, but I was intrigued with trying to figure out if there was a way to paint it. To use sort of Carol's example, like not about the thing it was, which was a fishing pier, but more about an interesting structure, almost a sculpture, and to really look at the dynamics of the beams, and again, the painting within the painting where you look through and see the end of it. So that was the inspiration for painting this. And this is a really small piece, but actually I'm currently working on a larger, different composition, but a larger version of this as well. So I'm still exploring this as a subject. And then this final one is, again, I was really interested in the beautiful colors and shapes that happen in the coastline, but I love that there was still, for me, there was that architectural element of the causeway that sort of juxtaposed you know, against the organic, this kind of sculptural or structural shapes of the bridge.
Looks great. Thank you, Kim.
Well, thank you.
So next is Elena Posey's gallery. Hi, Elena. Oh, you're muted.
Oh,
There.
am I good now?
Yes.
Yes. So obviously I'm all about color, process, how the colors are together. This is actually one of my, it came from another set. So I kind of like I took, this is a landscape. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's kind of like a landscape, cityscape, color block. And I took this painting and jumped into the rest of the show. So that's where we're going from that. And yeah, here, this is kind of another landscape. I'm really concerned about like color, how they work together. When I sit down to paint, it's more of like a, you know, just like what's going to happen. I mean, it's a process. It's how they're working together. I don't know exactly what the final piece is going to be. It's more about just painting and yeah. So that's kind of, I have 2 young children as well. So this is kind of almost like a mess. It's just always a mess.
So Elena, did you work towards this direction from somewhere else, or were you always sort of interested in color and paint texture and abstraction?
I mean, I do have my, yeah, I mean, I think that the color and the way that they work together and the form and stuff was always very important to me. It's always been a process for me. I never sit down and say like, oh, I'm going to paint a mountain or I'm going to paint whatever. it's always like, I almost like set an intention and sit there and whatever comes out, comes out. So. Yeah.
So the title crystal is in a lot of these works.
Yes. So my mother was actually a massage therapist and she worked a lot with crystals. Unfortunately, she passed away. So yeah, there are some like things with her where I remember crystals and they're coming into work here and yeah. There is a lot of reflection there with my mother, for sure. These specifically are, and I also like to work with like color patterns. Just it's almost like I sit down and I just paint one and then the other one comes and I paint another one and the other one comes and I paint, it's almost like they're informing the next piece. So it's all about, oh, well, that worked in the piece before. So can it work in the next piece? And how can I kind of, I don't know, make that shift, so to speak. I mean, for me, this is Salt Lamp. That's one of my favorites because I actually inherited her salt lamp. That's where this whole show, I guess, was cumulatively came. And I think it's more so when I have 2 young kids. I think I've said that before, but it's more so that when I sit down and paint, I don't have an objective or a solution. It's just, I want to paint and I want to just see what happens next. So.
How much painting can you do with 2 kids? Are you able to barricade yourself in your studio?
I do have a little studio, but I mean, yeah, I think it's more so I'm not like trying to like, oh, I'm sitting down and I'm going to paint a landscape today or whatever. I'm just more so, I'm just going to paint and whatever comes out, comes out. And these crystals were actually these are all crystal paintings from my mom. And they mean something to me because, that's what she was about. And I don't know. I feel these remind me of her. Yeah. And I am interested about color, pattern, how they work together and all that kind of stuff. But it's more so that I just put it down. I don't really go back into paintings much. I do it, it's intuitive. And actually, I think it was Carol or who said that she puts the or maybe Judy that puts it on the side of how she was feeling. And I think that's actually a great idea. I should start doing like put it on the side, like this is what you meant by that. So yeah, I mean, these are all just reflective of one kind of informs the other, if that makes any sense. So you have one, and then I'm like, oh, I really liked that, or that meant something. And so then I do the next, and then I do the next. It's all a process. So it's very much about color, process, and just being in the moment of painting. So I did this like kind of cityscape building blocks thing. So these are kind of more of that variety where it was more like bricks, where you're building a home or whatever you're building. So that was kind of where I was going with that. So I kind of jumped off. These are where I probably started and then I went into the crystals.
This one has, it looks like an image behind it, a house shape.
Yeah. So sometimes, yeah, I do paint over and then I'm like, oh, well, that's actually nice to like, it's a house. And then I do kind of build on that kind of thing.
It's a great show. Thank you. And thank you to all the artists. So we will end here. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming. And if you can, please come down to the gallery. The show is up through Sunday. You can also see everything on our website.